Today, we're diving into a really passionate argument from our source material. The claim that the 2026 FIFA World Cup has completely morphed from a joyous global celebration into, well, an absolute financial scam that's pricing out the average fan. Our source takes a hard, critical look at the economics behind the world's game and makes the case that this upcoming tournament is essentially a giant shakedown for everyday supporters. We're going to unpack exactly how they arrived at this conclusion by looking at the numbers, the logistics, and some crazy historical precedents.
So here's our roadmap for today. We'll start by looking at the illusion of the everyman sport, then break down the true cost of admission. After that, we'll uncover the hidden fees, explore our source's personal history with FIFA, discuss this VIP corporate takeover, and finally talk about the fans who are just left on the sidelines.
All right, Section 1, the everyman sport illusion, the promise versus the reality. The source outlines the sheer, massive scale of this event. It's happening across 3 host nations, Mexico, Canada, and the United States. And guys, this isn't just a long weekend. It kicks off on June 11th and spans an incredible 39 days, wrapping up on July 19th. That geographic footprint and duration, totally unprecedented. It really sets the stage for what is supposed to be this massive, inclusive celebration of international football.
Now, what's really interesting here is how the analysis targets the tournament's expansion to 24 teams. On the surface, you'd think, hey, bringing in more teams is a great way to get the whole globe involved, right? Well, our source argues the exact opposite. They claim this expansion was designed purely for profit. Think about it. More teams mean more matches, and more matches mean a lot more inventory to sell. According to the source, that whole narrative of bringing the world together is basically just a smokescreen to maximize revenue.
Moving on to Section 2, the true cost of admission, unpacking that major sticker shock.
The real breaking point, according to the source, is the staggering cost of just getting into the stadium. If you want decent seats for a group stage match, say an opening game like the United States versus Paraguay, you are looking at prices hitting $6,000 on the secondary market. The creator makes a great point. A match against Paraguay, with all due respect, shouldn't historically demand that kind of premium. But because everyday fans were locked out of the initial sales, they're forced into the secondary market that is just completely untethered from reality.
And this brings us to a really harsh quote. The creator characterizes this pricing model as an absolute shakedown, directly accusing the system of turning passionate sports fans into human ATM machines. The sentiment here is that people's deep generational loyalty to their national teams is literally being weaponized against them. You want to see your team play in person? You're going to have to pay up.
How is this happening behind the scenes? The creator points the finger directly at dynamic pricing. If you're not familiar with that term, it basically means costs fluctuate based on real-time demand. It's just like buying airline tickets. You know, if it's a random Tuesday and demand is low, the price drops. But if it's a holiday weekend, the price skyrockets. By applying dynamic pricing to World Cup tickets, the system inherently prioritizes money over accessibility. It guarantees those prices stay astronomically high.
Let's jump to Section 3, hidden fees and logistics, the classic nickel and diming. Because, you see, the financial escalation doesn't stop at the stadium gates. Far from it. Hotels that typically charge, say, $200 on the high end are allegedly spiking to between $800 and $1,000 a night. And here's the kicker. You might expect that kind of gouging for the Super Bowl, but these prices are surging even for matches with much lower international interest, like Iran versus New Zealand. The entire hospitality sector in these host cities is allegedly using the tournament as an excuse to just inflate prices across the board.
And what if you want to drive to a stadium in Florida? Well, general parking is going to cost you an incredibly specific and honestly baffling $151. Seriously, why $151? Why not $150? The creator uses this oddly specific number to really highlight the absurdity of the cash grab. Imagine a family of 4 just trying to park their car. That is a massive barrier to entry before they even scan their tickets.
The everyday logistics are just compounding the pain. The analysis points out that stadium food, which we all know is already notoriously expensive, think $9 hot dogs and $18 beers at regular baseball games, is expected to see a 25 to 40% markup for the World Cup. Okay, so you don't park, you take public transit instead? Not a safe haven either. The source notes that even public transit bus rides are hitting $30. The argument is clear. At every single touch point, the fan is being squeezed.
Which brings us to Section 4, a history with FIFA. Some personal grievances.
To really understand where this deep distrust comes from, the creator shares a fascinating, kind of bizarre anecdote from their time working in kids' entertainment. Back in the VHS and DVD era, their company produced a talking soccer ball toy that was translated into Spanish, French, and a bunch of other languages. They sold millions of units, and because of that massive success, the creator actually had to deal directly with the global organization running the sport.
Based on that specific business experience, the source vehemently describes the staff they interacted with as pretentious jerks who operated like, and I quote, mafia bosses. The communication was reportedly incredibly difficult and arrogant. It's super interesting to see how this personal business dealing from years ago fuels their current view of the organization today. They frame this whole 2026 tournament not just as an expensive event, but almost as the work of a criminal enterprise.
And that leads perfectly into Section 5, the VIP Billionaires Game, the corporate takeover.
The source material makes a really strong argument that corporate hospitality has completely swallowed up the best seats in the house. What was promised to be this unifying event for everybody, rich, poor, locals, international visitors, has transformed into an exclusive billionaires' playground. The focus is entirely on VIP clubs, luxury lounges, and private suites. Meanwhile, the everyday fans who actually build the sports culture, they're getting less and paying way, way more.
To prove this isn't just an isolated soccer issue, the material compares it to a recent NBA Finals matchup between the Knicks and the Spurs. They point out that fans were paying up to $40,000 for a ticket and $9,000 just to sit way up in the nosebleed rafters. It illustrates this much broader, troubling trend in live sports across the board. Going to a game is becoming a luxury product where people are essentially paying tens of thousands of dollars an hour just for the status of being in the building.
Finally, Section 6, left on the sidelines, the average fan's reality. So, where does this leave everyone else? The analysis concludes that the vast majority of fans will simply be watching from the privacy of their own living rooms. And if you want to go out to a bar to capture some of that communal energy, get ready because it's going to cost you there too. Local pubs in places like Huntington Beach, California, are already planning to charge steep cover fees just to let people walk through the door and watch the television broadcast.
The creator contrasts this pretty bleak reality with a personal memory. They remember arriving 3.5 hours early to the 1993 Super Bowl between the Bills and the Cowboys, and they reminisce about the incredible, totally accessible fan festivals that surrounded the stadium. They lament that they haven't seen anything remotely similar advertised for 2026. And honestly, they express heavy doubt that FIFA will offer any community-focused experiences this time around without, you guessed it, a hefty price tag attached. We're reminded of the real human impact of this massive economic shift. The material brings up individuals like Elena, a passionate fan who actually wrote a heartfelt email begging the creator to cover this topic. And they also mentioned the source's own fiercely independent girlfriend. Both of these women represent the everyday, die-hard supporters who are just completely and totally priced out of attending a once-in-a-lifetime event taking place right in their own backyard.
Which leaves us with this final, lingering thought based on the source's passionate analysis. They argue that this tournament was promised as a way to bring the world together, an international celebration where people hold hands and sing songs. But as live sports increasingly become a gated luxury product reserved for corporate elites and billionaires, we really have to ask, is the world's game actually for the world anymore? Is a fascinating and frustrating question to ponder as 2026 approaches. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I hope it gave you a clearer look into the real financial realities of the upcoming tournament.